Yeah, at the moment Greenpeace is now here in Lufuten with the ship Esperanza to protect this region from increasing oil tanker traffic, planned oil exploration, and an increasing amount of overfishing, which is threatening the livelihood of the local communities and also the environment in the area. As most people know, Norway is a very oil-dependent economy. We have large oil fields in the North Sea, further south, which is heavy industrialized ocean. The oil industry is now pushing very strongly to open up also the extremely sensitive, vulnerable areas in the north, like here in Lufuten, like in the Barents Sea, also for oil exploration. We think that is a very dangerous development. It of course fuels climate change, but it also allows this industrial polluting and risky activity into areas that are too sensitive to be opened for any risky activities like this. Some of the oil companies, when they try to force their way in, basically, and lobby for opening up for these areas, they claim that they can now drill the oil with absolutely no emissions to sea and very low risk of accidents. Experience has already shown that this is not true. The drilling that the oil companies are doing at the moment, exploration drilling in the Barents Sea, with the world's most modern drilling exploration rig, the Eirik Raude, has already proven to have had at least 3 accidental releases of chemicals and oils to the ocean. 2 in February and 1 now in April, just a few days ago, which proves that wherever people are involved, difficult operations, the risk of serious or smaller accidents are present. And in an area like this, with these enormous ecological values, we cannot afford to take that risk. Most Norwegians are quite concerned about environmental protection, and I think if you ask, they will be proud of Norway as a relatively clean country. At the same time, they're not aware of the fact that these areas here in the north, the Arctic, Lufuten, Barents areas, are totally unique in international context. That gives Norway a special responsibility to preserve them for the future and not exploit them and not create too much danger and risk in these areas, because the ecological systems here are much more rich, much more valuable, but also much more sensitive than other ocean areas in, for example, the North Sea. So I don't think that most Norwegian people and politicians and decision makers are aware of the uniqueness of the nature here north, because they don't visit it too often, and they just look over the sea and say, oh, it looks freezy and cold, but quite scenic sometimes, and then they forget about unique values. Here in Lufuten and Barents Sea areas, we have the world's last large cod population, for example, which is kind of delivering almost half of the total global cod landings, because all the other big cod fisheries in the world have collapsed because of overfishing and overpollution. This is remaining, and we think it should remain also for the future. Greenpeace has been opposed to commercial whaling for a long time, and our opposition in the 70s and 80s helped stop all whaling in the world, because which was very important, because several of the big whale populations were threatened to extinction because of massive industrial whaling basically all across the globe. So that moratoria that was created against whaling is still valid. However, Norway decided in 93-94 to restart its commercial whaling on a much lower scale and only in these areas, coastal areas, but in a violation of that international agreement. So we're afraid that more countries may follow Norway's line to disobey international agreements when it comes to whales management. And we think that's an important principle, that also Norway follows international rules and regulations. whale population that Norwegian whalers are hunting at the moment is not seriously endangered. It's a quite large population. So it's more about the principle of following international regulations or not. And in Norway, the whalers also always claim that whaling is so extremely important to maintain coastal livelihoods, which is only 1/10 of the truth in a way. Because what upholds these communities, like for example here, and has been the basis for this development of this community, has been the coastal fishery. The cod, the other fish species that are massive around here, and that they could fish from their small boats. So the whaling is just an extremely tiny part of that. At the moment, the Norwegian fisheries policy is totally undermining all of these small communities, while they are maintaining whaling and then giving themselves a very good image that, well, we're protecting coastal communities. But while it's around 100 people employed in whaling across Norway, while at the same time 800 people are losing their jobs as fishermen every year. So 8,000 people have lost their job in fishing since Norway started commercial whaling, while only 100 people have been employed in the whaling business. So it's all very small. It's a very symbolic issue, but it takes away focus from the big issues on the coast. Coastal livelihoods dependent on small-scale domestic fishing, and these threats with the oil tankers passing by, oil companies that want to drill for oil, and the large trawling fleet that is taking too much fish and also destroying vulnerable seabed habitats. Historically, the coastal livelihood and the coastal fishing communities have been able to live in complete harmony with the nature surrounding them, with the fish in the sea, with the seabirds that are coming in every year, and also, of course, with animals and life in the mountains and the coral reefs in the deep oceans. They have been a hiding place for the fish, the feeding grounds have been protected, and the fishermen have taken the excess value from the natural ecosystems. We're now moving into a different phase where we are afraid of this fragile ecosystem, this balance between people and the ecosystem, where the very capital intensive fishing fleet is moving in. They're much more interested in maximizing profits than maximizing coastal livelihood or sustainable development. They trawl through deep water coral reefs and destroy them on purpose, illegally, but on purpose. They take too much fish, so the fish has to move other places, which makes it inaccessible for the local communities, who therefore have to find new ways of employment if this moves as far as we're afraid that it will do, which, for example, can lead them into this situation where they have to accept, for example, oil development just in order to maintain a few jobs in the communities or hope for a few jobs in the communities. So this whole balance between the communities and the fragile but important ecosystem is, the way we see it, at risk because of overutilization and irresponsible management. I try to do that, but also one thing, appeal to the Italian viewers would be very good if you could take with. When we finished here, we had this kind of dialogue trying to empower the local communities in their fight against the factory fleet of trawlers and also against oil companies. And I think we've succeeded quite well so far to insert some new enthusiasm about the possibilities they have to stop this if they really fight. So when we leave here tomorrow, we'll go out on open sea to try to document some deep water coral reefs that are undocumented and try to change the burden of proof from the scientists to the trawlers, and try to force trawlers only to trawl in areas that have no value, if we can find such areas, and at least stay away from areas that may have important values at the seabed. Basically applying the precautionary principle at sea as we already do on land. One of the big problems for this area is that the Norwegian politicians have not understood their global responsibility to preserve it for future generations and also for other people outside Norway. So I think that everybody, including the Italian people, could try to help tell the Norwegian government and Norwegian people that we want you want us to protect this area and not let it be abused by the oil industry, for example. In Norway we have had very limited contact with the Sami people and their problems, but in Finland we have at the moment a forest rescue station in the northern Finnish forest where we cooperate with the local Sami people to protect forests against logging, because government companies in Finland are logging forest in Sami reserves. That takes away the possibilities for the reindeer to graze between the trees. So that's a very interesting example of good cooperation between Greenpeace and the Sami people. But in Norway the problems have been a bit more different, with the kind of grazing land restrictions and separations and various forms of regulation. So we're not being directly involved in that from the Norwegian side. One of the richest countries in the world, and we have so dispersed population and we have so many possibilities to maintain a rich biodiversity, still cannot agree on having wolves, sustainable population of wolves. So this year the craziness went even further when the parliament decided to have at minimum 3 family groups of wolves in this country, but they should basically be restricted into some areas. One of these groups moved outside the area, so then they forgot about the minimum rule and they decided to shoot down this family group. So lots of hunters were out and started to shoot them down. After a few days into that hunt, the leading wolf of another group, kind of bordering group, came into the hunting area and was shot. So the government still, under massive protests, continued the hunt, which then resulted in one family group deleted, the leader of the next group killed, so that group also fell apart. So the only group we have left now is 1 out of 3 that we had, which was what the parliament themselves just a few months earlier decided was the absolute minimum. So I can't say more, I think, about that than it is hugely embarrassing to be Norwegian and to be environmentalist and basically to be a person to witness that wolf management craziness. Also here I think kind of a call from abroad will be quite important to get Norway to understand that we can't continue in this irresponsible way if we're going to be seen as an environmental leader in other issues.
Okay.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
4 years ago, when the Norwegian oil company Hydro wanted to drill for oil just outside the island of Røst, here at the end of the Lufuten island chain, the protests were so harsh from the local fishing communities and also from fishermen and environmentalists across the country that the rig had to turn, even though it had come right on location, just outside the islands of Røst, and turn and go back. It was, of course, an extremely sensitive situation since it was election year, and also the politicians had to be more alert and sensitive to the public opinion. But it was a quite strong manifestation of local and coastal opposition to the oil drilling plans. And this year we will have new oil drilling by the company Eni in another sensitive location, which is in the kindergarten of the cod that spawns and gets born here in the Lufuten area. And fishermen all along the northern Norwegian coast have big problems to accept oil drilling in the kindergarten of their cod. So I think we can face also serious opposition from the fishermen alongside with environmentalists if any decides to take their rig up to the Barents Sea. So one of the most immediate problems for this region at the moment is the Italian company Eni that plans to drill just outside North Cape, very close to one of the biggest puffin mountains we have in Norway, one of the most coastal near oil wells we've ever had in Norway, and in the middle of the Barents Sea. So that is one of our main targets for this tour and also for the rest of the year, to get Eni to understand that they cannot come here and force an opening of this sensitive area for oil exploration, which is a violation of the views of lots of local people, of the nature, the ecology, the ecosystem, and of course the environmental organizations across the board, both here in Norway and internationally. So we cannot understand why an Italian company wants to come to Norway to drill for oil in such an extremely sensitive area, when this is also so politically controversial. For this field, Eni is the main operator and the main driving force behind development of this coastal near well in the Barents Sea, and they have called it ironically the Goliath field, and I think that we will ensure that there will also be plenty of Davids around to help protect the Barents.